You're saying essentially that Shakespeare was the E-40 of the Elizabethan era?
I think so. Yeah.
My only concern is the further we go down this path, the closer we get to being a substitute teacher who turns his chair backwards and like puts his arm over the back of it and says like, let me tell you about the original rapper. We have an amazing interview coming up with Riz Ahmed. We talk about Hamlet and hip hop and everything in between. But I want to talk to you about something very serious before we get into it, which is the production of Bullseye, which is supported by folks like you. We've got a link down below me, and during the Max Fund Drive, which is what's going on right now, we are asking you to become a member of Maximum Fund and support our show directly. Our show isn't paid for by the government or by foundations or by anyone else but your direct support. So please click that link below me, become a member at $5 a month or more. You've got access to all kinds of great thank you gifts and exclusive content just for members. Again, it starts at $5 a month. So click that link down there, become a member right now. Let's get into Riz Ahmed. Riz Ahmed, welcome back to Bullseye. It's so nice to see you.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
When you study classical theater, in my mind, I think all I can think of is probably like practicing sword fighting. So
Swashbuckling, yeah.
Well, we're not talking about acting school. We're talking about classical theater school specifically, right?
No. So look, I went to Central School of Speech and Drama for 1 year after I graduated university to do a master's course, and it was a master's in classical acting. And that specifically, mainly meant Shakespeare, and some Greek tragedy and stuff as well. And I was very lucky to be taught by Rob Clare, who really took me under his wing. And, however many years, 20-something years later, helped me prepare for our screen adaptation of Hamlet. So, mainly what we were doing is trying to get under the skin of these classical works that are often written in a way that is not naturalistic to how we talk right now, and trying to connect to the emotional core of it and bringing it to life in a way that is truthful. And it was an amazing experience. It overlapped a lot with when I was kind of starting out as a rapper on the rap battle scene in London and doing a ton of that. And so I started to find the similarities between like Shakespearean verse and rap, and they're all just different kinds of poetry, but they all just have to be delivered from a place of like feeling and truth,
You say like their classical theater is not naturalistic to the way that we speak now. To some extent, also not naturalistic to the way that people spoke at the time the plays were written, right? It's a sort of a different kind of performance. Naturalism, not the only goal or even the main goal.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because people sometimes find Shakespeare challenging because they say, I don't understand what all the words mean. But people at the time, at Shakespeare's time, also didn't understand what all the words mean. That's because, not the least, people didn't talk like that. As you said, it's written in a particular way. It's like poetic. But also, Shakespeare made up like 4,000 new words, So they definitely didn't understand what all the words meant. He's making things up. He made up the word eyeball, as a kind of compound word. And so he's making a creative decision to kind of astound us and kind of have us kind of lean in and step back and go, whoa, what was that? And in a way, kind of trying to stop us from logically processing the words, but to more kind of receive it in a bodily way, in the same way you receive music. You don't sit there trying to analyze and catch every single word. First time you hear a rap song or any kind of song, really, it's the intention and the energy and the feeling and the flow that hits you first. And Shakespeare is trying to do that. That's why he's deliberately using words that you cannot understand, because he's making them up,
You're saying essentially that Shakespeare was the E-40 of the Elizabethan era?
I think so. Yeah. I think he's actually, E-40, maybe Big Daddy Kane, and Nas all in one. If I may be so bold as to claim that.
Riz, my only concern is the further we go down this path, the closer we get to being a substitute teacher who turns his chair backwards and like puts his arm over the back of it and says like, let me tell you about the original rapper.
But he wasn't an original rapper, right? But I mean, I just think it's interesting in a way that, you know, certain kinds of creative expression, they get kidnapped into the establishment, you know, and actually they were always kind of popular forms of art. And, you know, honestly, in you know, a couple of 100 years' time, people might feel that way about Jay-Z or whatever, or E-40, you know, and it gets kidnapped by the establishment and suddenly it gets seen as stuffy, but it was never meant to be that, you know. So sometimes we have to use these analogies to like bring them to life.
I was surprised when I learned that you had this career as a battle rapper because your records are not very battle rap-y. Let's say your records tend to be pretty personal or in some cases like fictionally personal. So what did you learn from being a battle rapper in your early 20s?
I learned that there are 64 million ways to make fun of somebody's mother. And it's an art form in itself.
Did you, at that time in London, when there was a battle, were there beats playing or was it a cappella?
Yeah, it was beats. Yeah. I mean, so it was like one big thing was called Jump Off. You can go back and watch my Jump Off rap videos, battle videos.
Oi, this Geordie thinks that it's time to flow. Go back to Newcastle. This is not Byker Grove. Oi. When you come from Newcastle, how can you demand respect? The best MCs from Newcastle are Ant and Oi, everybody give this prick a round of applause. Don't you recognize him? Look, it's a young Santa Claus.
There was Battle Scars, there was Bombay Bronx, there was all these different kinds of things that I was doing a lot. And it was a way of trying to just, you know, get a foot on the ladder, you know? These videos would be going viral, people would be watching them. It was like it was a thing that was blowing up at the time. But honestly, what I learned was how to embrace absolute terror. Because this was not even like, I know since then there has been a lot of kind of battle rap stuff where people pre-write verses and you know who you're battling up front and you're pre-preparing all these verses, and it's like, nah, man, like, it wasn't like that in that particular moment. It was freestyle. You know, you were making it up on the spot. And it was, if it felt pre-written, people would start booing. You know, that changed.
What was it like to go from that performance to doing, you know, Moliere or something like that in school?
It was mainly Shakespeare, honestly. But can I tell you, like, I think one thing fed the other a little bit because, you know, like, you can communicate a lot with rhythm before anyone understands what you're saying. You can communicate a lot with tone before anyone understands what you're saying, and timing. And so I think, yeah, one thing definitely informed the other. And I don't think I was necessarily that conscious of it at the time, but it definitely must have. And certainly when we've done this kind of adaptation of Hamlet now, you know, I think one of the reasons Anil Karia made sense as a director is because he has filmed so much rap and he's filmed so many incredible, you know, rap music videos, some of the most iconic ones of the last 10 years out of the UK. And so he knows how you make something poetic feel raw and how you make something raw feel poetic. And that was the secret sauce we wanted. That's what we needed to unlock our adaptation and do something that didn't just feel like, you know, an intellectual poetry recital as Shakespeare sometimes can, but to feel something modern and contemporary. And, you know, we weren't doing hip hop Shakespeare by any means, but we just wanted the camera to have that fluidity and flow to it. And just for someone who had been around a lot of kind of poetry or rap performance to be shooting it.
When you were a young man, what was your relationship to Shakespeare as like English cultural icon, like maybe the greatest contribution of England to world culture ever? As
wait, you putting that above the Great British Bake Off?
That's fair. I mean, for me, like I'm speaking on behalf of everybody. For me, maybe it's like The Mighty Boosh is number one.
Yes.
I really like that. I'm a big fan of the 70s All Creatures Great and Small, but like I like the new one too. I'm just saying that's the 70s one is the top one for me.
Wow, some deep cuts in there, man. But what was my relationship to that?
Yeah, so as a British person whose, family's history in Britain went back a generation or whatever it was, rather than to Elizabethan times.
I felt like the epitome of everything that didn't belong to me and that I didn't belong in, And I was saying, I think that Shakespeare isn't dead. He's kind of been kidnapped by the establishment in that way. He's become a symbol of that stuffiness, and it can feel like a museum artifact or something, right? This Shakespeare stuff. And so my relationship to it was, I think, I just felt like, I'm not interested. It's got nothing to do with me. And luckily enough, I did have a teacher who was really cool. He wasn't a substitute teacher who put his chair backwards, but it did have an element of Dead Poets Society to it. It was this guy, he was a white Jewish guy from the north of England in Wolverhampton who happened to speak fluent Punjabi because his mother and him, they both kind of grew up in an anti-racist struggle, and Wolverhampton has a big South Asian community, immigrant community. And anyway, he understood like me and some of the other boys there that felt out of place. And he took us under his wing and gave me this play and was like, you feel like an outsider, right? Like, so does this guy. So does the central character of this play that's supposedly at the heart of the establishment. He feels like an outsider. Just because these stories are being kind of co-opted they're about rebels. They're about people who feel like they're lost in an unjust system. They're trying to make the sense of their place in the world. This guy feels how you feel, and he gave it to me, and the poetry of it also really was something that I loved. But the thing that was really mind-blowing that I didn't expect is how similar it was to like South Asian culture. I was like, man, this is a story about growing up in Wembley, or Jackson Heights or whatever. And so it really changed how I saw myself in relation to the culture, and it had a profound effect on me, and I wanted to kind of make that case and open it up for other people in that way.
There's something that you said that struck me as a parallel with your music, which is there are decades of history of hip hop in the UK, obviously, in a variety of communities. But at its heart, hip hop is an African-American tradition. And it strikes me that when you make records, you are taking this form that, different people can argue whether it belongs to someone else, but it has a blueprint that was created by someone else's cultural group.
Absolutely.
And very self-consciously bringing elements to it that are specifically of your cultural cohort, not just of English hip hop culture, but of your own cultural background in addition to your personal perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope so. I hope I'm trying to contribute something and not just take something, on one level. And on another level, I guess like that kind of collision of different influences excites me. I grew up on US hip hop, but also on UK sound system culture, garage, drum and bass, rave culture. I started off emceeing at raves and pirate radio stations in that way. And then that mixed with the influences of Qawwali and Sufi music and Bollywood music and all of that. So yeah, I guess I could pick it apart and say that excites me and I want to contribute. But on another level, it's just me, That's like, if I'm going to make music that feels honest and authentic to me, like it's going to have those elements in it, The DNA of it is going to reflect my experience, which was defined by all those influences as a Londoner, as someone of my identity with those different sides to it.
When you're making Shakespeare on film, you're like filming something that has in its origins fundamental theatricality to it. I mean, they're about a dialogue between the performers on stage and the people in the audience that is different from most films. So how do you think about how to present a soliloquy when there's a lens in between you and the audience?
Yeah, it's a great question, specifically with soliloquies, because soliloquies are hard, man. It's like, who are you talking to? And the answer in a theater is usually you're talking to the audience. There's a direct moment of connection with the audience. You can find an audience member's eyes and ask them the question, to be or not to be. You can really look for the answer in their eyes. It's a moment of like, breaking through that fourth wall. Much harder to do staring down the lens. It can sometimes read as like self-conscious in a different way, or an attempt to approximate that audience connection that is never going to be the same, really. It was something we thought about a lot, and we made the decision that with our own soliloquies, actually, Hamlet really starts speaking out loud to himself in a way that is not normal when he starts to unravel a bit more. So actually leaning into the strangeness of a soliloquy, like, what is that? Like ranting at yourself. There's a scene in our Hamlet when he starts the soliloquy, which is, am I a coward? And he's wondering, like, why hasn't he already avenged his father's murder? And he's being very hard on himself, as he's prone to do, and he's really laying into himself. But then Ophelia comes in and interrupts, and he self-consciously stops. He's still slightly aware this is a weird thing he's doing. By every stage in our film, we had to kind of answer that question: who is he talking to? For me, he was sometimes talking to himself. Often he was talking to his father, who in his father's presence, we're talking to his uncle. But there's a lot of specific work to be done around, like, who are you talking to and why. The engine underneath the soliloquy has to be like very, I think, like finely tuned in terms of like, who you talking to, dude, on film. And there's some, that was a cool challenge. Like we really talked a lot about that and worked and reworked a lot of stuff around that.
How did you decide to deal with it?
Yeah, just like that, like kind of how he was saying, it's, we try to make it feel, even though it's something slightly strictly naturalistic to engage in long kind of poetic speeches to yourself, the idea of talking to yourself is not alien to us. We can still root it in the truth of that. We've all done that. We've all replayed things. We've all said to ourselves what we wish we had said in a room. And so we use that, the honesty and the truth of that, as a starting point. We've all prayed, or some of us have prayed, some of us have spoken to people who are not really there with us anymore, hoping they can hear us. And so we wanted to kind of like start with that place. And then as he starts speaking out loud more and more freely, it's really also a sign of his gradually unraveling mental state.
Hey, Bullseye viewer. I'm cutting into this great interview because I want to explain to you the Max Fund Drive. It is the 2 weeks or so every year that Bullseye asks you to directly support the work that we do. Bullseye isn't produced by NPR or a big public radio station. We're produced by a worker-owned cooperative called Maximum Fun here in Los Angeles. And this video capability is something that we have just added to our show. This is Daniel Spear. He is our video producer. Daniel, thank you for wearing your formal outfit for today's pitch. Mm-hmm. Daniel, you've been at Maximum Fun for what, a year or so?
A year and a half about.
Yeah.
Part-time, and then now it's been a year and a half, I'd say.
We're really thrilled to have you working on Bullseye. We previously were an audio-only program.
True.
What did we have to do to get video set up here?
Well, this is our new studio, and so it took 3 cameras. We've got an ATEM switcher, we've got backup recorders, we've got SSDs, we've got lights, and all that set dressing that you see around here. The hours of discussion over whether this pill should be here or that plant. Really.
Okay, this is a microphone. This is not a. Here's the message that we're trying to convey to you. All of this great Bullseye video that you've been watching on YouTube or watching on social media is supported by a full-time staff member. All of this equipment, and we have to pay for it. So we hope that you will become a member of Maximum Fun. That means slide us a few bucks a month, whether it's $5, $10, $20 a month, at MaximumFun.org/join, and say that you think that an operation like this should continue to exist. Again, we're not getting our money from the government. We're not getting our money from some big organization. We're actually a small worker-owned collective of about 20 people who produce this program. And we're really proud that we have added all these great videos that you've been enjoying watching, but we need your support to make them happen. Now, I will say this, Daniel. You don't just have to do it out of the kindness of your heart. You also get stuff.
You do get stuff.
If you go to MaximumFun.org/join, you become a member at the $5 a month level. You get access to this huge trove of content that is only for members, including this year we had a great time going to the Paper World Stationery Expo and doing an out-of-the-studio Bullseye with all of the junk journaling enthusiasts there. Junk journaling, if you're not on journaling TikTok, I guess,
Sure, yeah.
is a thing where you save your trash, sort it by color, and glue it into a book. But it's much nicer than that. Mm-hmm. And we met all these nice people who do it at the Paper World Stationery Expo and put together an entire episode just about that. It was such a great time. That's exclusive for members. We also have lots of other member exclusive content. If you're wondering how Bullseye gets made, that's one of the things you can find out. And last year we made an entire show that was called Hey, What's Your Job? Where we talked to people with unbelievable jobs, including like the city manager of Weed, California, about what they do in their day-to-day lives. All of them Max Fun supporters, Bullseye listeners, and we got to know what it's like to be a professional maker of robes for Buddhist monks. We met some really fascinating people. A guy who was in a band in college that fizzled out, then later became famous and has a job, and then on weekends he sometimes flies to Brazil to play a stadium show. All kinds of really cool stuff in the members only feed. And at $10 a month, you get this awesome keychain, which you can put on your backpack, you can put it on your purse, you can put it on your keys. Daniel, I believe that I have now, by going like this, made you super.
I have to get it. Yeah, I gotta get a PNG, gotta float it, add drop shadow. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Daniel, what does it mean to you to work at a worker-owned cooperative rather than making videos for a peanuts company or something?
I have a say, and it also feels like there's a bit more of like a creative element to it that I haven't had in previous jobs. I feel like I can take a day off without everything exploding. I feel like I'm supported by my staff, and it's a good environment. People are overall, compared to other jobs that I've had, are overall happier.
So if you are enjoying these videos, if you enjoy listening to Bullseye, whether it's on the radio or on the podcast, we're asking you to become a member of Maximum Fun and be the reason that this show exists.
It takes a lot of work to put a show like this together, and just $5 a month, that's all it takes to be a member to get all that access to all that content. The link is going to be in the description, and it would be great if you could support us.
MaximumFun.org/join. There's been a lot of talk about the fact that you set the to be or not to be speech in a fast-moving car.
Yeah.
Which was an interesting context. But I think the bigger choice that you've made, or the more specific choice that you've made, is a sort of a content choice, which is, I think people think about Hamlet as like a guy in tights, always, putting the back of his hand against his forehead and thinking about suicide. And it is very possible to interpret that speech, especially with some information about Elizabethan language, as not a consideration of suicide, but a consideration of sort of the consequences of action, like whether you should make a nice life for yourself and ignore how bad things are around you, or have a miserable life trying to right all the injustices of the world.
Yeah.
I feel like you landed on that interpretation, that idea that speech is about taking action in the world rather than suicide. So what led you to that conclusion, and what did that give you in the film?
Honestly, it's my own hot take that is what the speech is about. It has been either just misunderstood traditionally, and people have been repeating that kind of slightly erroneous interpretation, or it has been kind of de-radicalized. This is a very radical, confronting play, and it's about fighting back against injustice, even if that means you could lose everything. And like, you know, Shakespeare starts to become celebrated and he's co-opted, he's kidnapped by the establishment, and it's like, no, this guy's having a tough time. That ain't what he's saying. You just literally read the words on the page. He's saying to be or not to be, that is the question, right? Sorry, what was that? What was the question? It's deliberately obtuse, right? It's like, oh, so he's going to expand on it in the next line. Well, whether to suffer, right? The slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, this crazy roulette wheel of this world of life that we live in and how it keeps messing with us. Do we just suffer that in silence? Or, he says, to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them, right? You fight a sea, what's it going to do? It's going to drown you, it's going to wash you away, it's going to kill you. So he's saying that to be or not to be is not, should I kill myself or not? It's, do I live by just kind of turning a blind eye to everything that's going on, or do I fight back even if I know that will be the end of me? So it's about resistance, man. It's about the pros and cons of resistance, the dangers of resistance. It's about whether we have the courage to resist even if we stand to lose everything, maybe even our lives. That is such a radical, urgent, modern, confronting question. I can understand why it's been de-radicalized. I feel the energy change in the room when I talk about that in a Q&A, right? It's a dangerous idea. And yet the most celebrated speech ever written in the history of the English language is about this idea that is borderline illegal to talk about, right?
I mean, it sets the tone of the entire performance, because if that is your fundamental question, you are kind of making a choice between the back of the hand to the forehead, fainting spell kind of descent into madness, and the kind of like agita-driven Johnny Cash, too many greenies descent into madness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess it's like the central question of the play for me is something that we're all feeling, which is, has the world gone crazy or am I losing my damn mind? That's literally how we all feel. Every day we wake up, we look at the world we're living in, we're like, has the world lost its mind or have I? Like, what's happening here? How can we all be carrying on like this? Is normal? This is crazy. Like, what happened? What happened today? You check the news, like, what's going on? You know, just look to your left and right, and we're just all like gobsmacked. And then we're all gaslit about, oh, it's not that crazy. And then we all feel powerless about it. And then we realize we're part of the problem. That collection of feelings is what Hamlet is about. That is what he is feeling, right? And that's my, passionate belief. And actually, part of what we wanted to do with this adaptation is to democratize it and re-radicalize it. And so, yeah, like we just felt like if this speech is not a meditative philosophical pause at the heart of the play, if it is a moment of him trying to rouse and rile himself into action, if it is actually him playing a game of chicken with himself, saying, do I have what it takes to take on something bigger than me, something that I'm sure will destroy me? If the speech is a game of chicken, we're going to stage it like a game of chicken, and he's going to be driving headlong into a lorry much bigger than him.
Do you ever pray out loud? Have you ever prayed out loud? Have you ever talked to yourself in a mirror?
Yeah, I prayed out loud. I do pray out loud sometimes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What is that experience like?
It's very cathartic, I think. Yeah. I think kind of like vocally like committing to this idea of like surrender and not being in control and needing help, and like affirming your vulnerability in that sense, like asking whatever is the God or the gods or the universe or destiny or your ancestors or whatever for some kind of help. I think that vulnerability it's a very important part of being alive. It's a very important part of how we connect to each other, how we kind of connect more to the love in the universe. It's through that vulnerability. So I see it kind of as an expression of vulnerability, as a cultivation of that vulnerability. And I don't know, for me it's like the power of belief is believing itself, is the thing. The truth of what you believe in isn't so as important in my mind. It's the belief, the act of faith, not the thing you have faith in. The act of faith itself is like, it's something that opens you up. I don't know. I think it opens you up to like the wonder and mystery and the vulnerability in life.
I mean, I don't mean to ascribe like the highest powers in the universe to the act of talking about somebody's mom. But it's not that different from the faith that is required to step on stage without lyrics and believe in your heart that you will be able to come up with something.
Yeah, or not that you will be able to consciously, but there's something somewhere will hand you something that you might be able to run with. I do think creativity is an act of faith. I think it's a leap of faith. I think it's most potent when we're not in control. You know, there's a David Bowie quote about when you can't feel the bottom of the swimming pool, that's when you know you're in the right place. I think that's true. You know, you're slightly off balance, out of your comfort zone. You have to draw on something in the unconscious and something in the instinct. You have to kind of go to that. Maybe it's fight or flight, you know. So I think so. I think living in that I'm not in control, I surrender, I'm vulnerable thing is, I think it can be helpful for creativity. At least I think it's certainly more thrilling place to create from than I got this figured out. I want to do this and that and this and that. It's like, what are you doing?
Not that long ago, Amazon showed me a preview for your show Bait. I mean, just like when I was pressing on my remote control, they didn't like come to my house. And it sounded like they sent me special.
I was like,
God, we gotta get some feedback from Jesse. But it showed me this thing, and my reaction to watching this preview was, well, first and foremost, there's my man Riz Ahmed. Like that guy a lot. He was on the show one time. He was great. That's the guy from Four Lions, I said to myself. You know, whatever, right? This guy's tremendous. But I also was like, what the heck kind of television show is this supposed to be? And I have to say that having watched and enjoyed it, I could still pose the same question for sure.
that is a wonderful compliment.
Because it is all the kinds of television show. Like, it is every kind of television show, as well as thoughts about every kind of television show.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, how and why, but also, like, where do you get off? You know what I mean?
I guess, like, it's something that happened quite organically because I guess I enjoy lots of different kinds of things, and I enjoy personally trying to do things that kind of defy categorization, if at all possible, and play a lot with tone. You know, where you're leaning in and then, whoa, you suddenly jump back, and then you're leaning, you know, things that you don't get too comfortable around, like what exactly you're watching. That just keeps me leaning in. That excites me personally, just creatively. But also, I guess if I was just trying to do that because I think, hey, that would be a fun thing to do, then it wouldn't really work and it would kind of be a bit pretentious. I think the reason why, what feedback we're getting is that is very playful with tone and very kind of genre defying in a way that feels organic, because the character himself is having an identity crisis. And so it stands to reason that the show is kind of having the same thing. Like 1 minute it's family drama, the next minute it's, you know, hopefully very kind of, you know, entertaining comedy. Next minute it's like there's an episode that's almost like a Linklater kind of, is one episode that's kind of inspired by a lot of like Indian soap operas and Bollywood movies I grew up watching. So it's like, you know, this character is trying to find who they are. And so it makes sense the show is kind of doing the same thing. It's going on a similar journey in a way. And so I think that does kind of feel organic. And also he's a character who code switches, who's got these different sides to himself. And those different sides of his personality are juxtaposed alongside each other, you know, in him. They're not like seamlessly merged. And so that's happening in the show as well. So it's really trying to kind of honor this character and follow those breadcrumbs to like what the show is, and you look at it and you're like, whoa, okay, that's kind of nuts, but he's also going kind of nuts. That makes sense.
There's a track on your most recent album from 5 years or so ago where you say you code switch till I don't know which my name is, and that is a description in part of, you know, family of immigrants story, also a story of somebody who is an English Londoner who works often in other countries, but certainly in the United States. it's a story of a rapper, right? Like I guess it's possible that there are rappers whose voice on mic is a literal representation of their sense of self, but usually there is some distance there. And an actor who, every 2 months, if you're lucky, you're a different person in your job. You're like in your 40s. Do you feel any more settled on which of these is the actual human being?
It's a great question. I think I code switch a lot less now. I think I try and bring all of myself into the room. And I think making this TV show was part of that process for me. Is about kind of trying to dramatize the untenability of compartmentalizing yourself, because when you're doing that, in some ways you're seeking validation, you're looking for love in all these different places, and each of those places is going to tear you apart, right? If you don't try and find it from inside yourself, embrace who you are. That's, I describe the show as like it's mission impossible if the impossible mission was self-love, right? It's like that's what bait is in a way. And so I think making the show is a big part of that for me, honestly, man. I definitely do still unconsciously code switch. Definitely still. It's just a thing, I think. A lot of people do. And it's not even necessarily a racial thing. It can also be a class thing. It could be a regional thing. It could be all kinds of things, right? I do it, but I also feel more like, hopefully I'm trying to like bring it all together more, and I don't know, doing Hamlet, but with a director who's made some of the most iconic rap videos out of the UK in the last 10 years is part of that. Making Bait is part of that. Making The Long Goodbye is part of that. I'm trying to bring together these different parts of me, because I guess I want to like give myself and other people permission to do the same thing.
That record has Mahershala Ali on it. Have you heard him rap?
I have not, but he told me, he used to make music back in the day. Yeah, I actually haven't, unfortunately.
I got to tell you, you got to go. He's got a video with Casual from Hieroglyphics and Planet Asia, a California underground legend, and Keith Murray.
Yeah.
He's a few years older than you, but right in the same neighborhood. He apparently doesn't rap anymore. You're still rapping.
Uh-huh.
You're going to shamelessly rap till the end of your days? I think you're allowed to do that now.
Yeah, interesting. What would be shameful about it?
Well, there was a time when all rapping stopped at like age 28 or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, that was the end. Somebody that wasn't 19 was ancient, when we were kids. I'm about the same age as you, right? Now, I don't think that's the case anymore.
Yeah, hopefully not.
My friend Open Mike Eagle, I think, is making his best work. He's in his 40s.
Incredible. He's an incredible artist. My wife's a novelist, and novelists generally get better with time. It's not like being a physicist where you're like smoked by the time you're 28, right? Apparently. I feel like I have more stories at the tip of my tongue, more confidence in like what I want to do with something more immediately and instinctively now than I ever did when I was younger. I know, I guess I'm thinking about also, at least a North Star for me is not just rap music, but Qawwali music, the North Indian and Pakistani kind of Sufi music. It's a kind of, I don't know, it's almost like a South Asian gospel jazz, right? Qawwali singers like kind of rap, like very fast, double time. They do like quick tirades of poetry. They do spoken word. They sing, they chant. It kind of encompasses in many ways a lot more of my influences than just rap music. It has bits of dance music, spoken word, all of that kind of stuff. And those guys keep going, man. Like, I think it just develops, and you have more to say. And at least I feel like I have more to say now than ever, as I'm trying to kind of bring together the different sides of myself and really close that distance between my public and private self. I think that's the big difference. I think even if I look at like The Long Goodbye from 5 years ago, it's a concept album, and it's about very personal things that I was feeling, but it's not drawn directly from my personal life, actually. Now I feel more confident to do that. I mean, we've got a soundtrack out for Bait, and I just dropped my first track in like, 4 years or whatever. And it's with Cass Is Dead, who's like, cult UK rapper who's absolutely adore. He's a guy who wears a mask all the time, so no one knows what he looks like. And yeah, it's just very personal, and it's been really gratifying to get that feedback from people that there's more to say and there's more to share, that I haven't kind of touched yet.
Well, we can go out with that record. Riz Ahmed, thank you so much for talking to me. It was nice to see you. And I hope that in another decade, you'll come back on the show again. Maybe even sooner.
I appreciate it. Hope so, my brother. Thank you so much.
I did it for fun, had it all the applause and awards, the naughtiest little swords, Mitchell and Forbes, it was nothing. Never wait no more than the door, didn't pay my board and control, but what's it for? It's for nothing. If we don't talk anymore, born by the Lina, suddenly it's awkward to call. You were my hero, wanted you to rate me, but you're appalled. So I feel zero on my feet, went up and out in the north. Yeah, you saw me at the Met and like the comment that called me out for being a pet of those.